The skies above the Calrec system burned red, ships exploded like dying stars, and screams echoed through every frequency. The enemy, known only as the Varn, moved without hesitation, without mercy. They were not interested in conquest. Wanted erasure. Entire civilizations had vanished beneath their onslaught. The Galactic Alliance, once a proud union of over 50 species, was losing. Their fleets were scattered. Their weapons failed. Their hopes crumbled. On the bridge of the flagship Vorshan's Oath, Commander Threx of the Valari watched another battle report come in. Another world lost. Another planet turned to ash. He didn't even flinch anymore. There were no surprises, now just slow defeat. But then the transmission came. A vote. A request. A name. Earthround. He had heard of the humans only in passing. Primitive young race from a system far from the core. They weren't known for diplomacy, not for science, not for trade. But there were rumors. Whispers from border patrols and deep space scouts. Stories that didn't make sense. Small human fleets, turning back pirate armadas, colonists surviving impossible odds, a single human outpost holding off a Zarnian warband for days with nothing but improvised weapons and fire. Most believed the tales were exaggerated, just stories to pass time during long space flights. But desperation breeds belief. And now the Council was calling a vote to invite Earth into the war, to bring humans into the Alliance, as equals. As warriors, Threx voted no, but the vote passed. The humans were coming. 3 cycles later, Threx stood inside Docking Bay 17 of the Krosari outpost. He watched the first human warship approach black metal, jagged and scarred. It didn't glide. Like other ships, it stalked. The engines thrummed low and angry. There was something unsettling about its design. No decorations, no honor banners, just functional, brutal steel. As the ramp hissed open, the first human soldiers stepped out. Tall, clad in thick armor, faces hidden behind dark visors. They didn't speak. They didn't salute. They walked in perfect silence, every movement precise and calm. Behind them walked a man in a long gray coat. No helmet, no armor, just cold blue eyes that scanned the room like a predator. Commander. Reese, the man said, extending a hand. Human Earth forces. We're here to help. Threx hesitated before shaking it. The human's grip was firm. Not aggressive, but firm enough to make Threx feel as though this man had crushed bones before. He couldn't explain it, but something about Reese was ... wrong, not evil, not hostile, just off, like something inside him had been broken along time ago and never quite healed. Your orders are to assist in the defense of Venerofer, Threx said, handing over a dataship. Expect heavy resistance. Reese nodded. Good. No questions. No requests for reinforcements. No concern. About enemy numbers. Just that one word. Good. The battle for Veneria 4 was supposed to be a delay tactic. Just enough to give the main fleet time to retreat. Every projection said the system would fall. Threx watched from a command station as the human fleet deployed. Only 5 ships, against 20 Varn destroyers. It should have been a massacre. It wasn't. The human ships moved in ways Threx had never seen. They didn't form formations, didn't rely on shields or long-range bombardments. They dove straight into the enemy, dodging, weaving, twisting through fire like shadows. Their weapons weren't elegant. They were brutal, focused, unrelenting. Missiles that split mid-air, cannons that tore through Varn armor, like paper. But it wasn't just the weapons. It was the way the humans fought. No fear, no hesitation, like they had done this 1,000 times before. Like they had nothing left to lose. Threx watched as one human ship took 3 hits to its engines and still rammed into a Varn cruiser, sacrificing itself to destroy the enemy core. The broadcast caught a final image before the feed went darker. Human pilot grinning madly as fire swallowed his ship. It wasn't strategy, it was madness, but it worked. The Varn pulled back, for the first time in over a year. The Alliance won a battle, and it wasn't because of numbers. It wasn't because of better weapons, it was because of them, the humans. After the battle, Threx visited the human command tent. He expected celebration, music, drink, something. But the camp was silent. Soldiers cleaned weapons in silence. Some prayed. Some stared at nothing. Rhys sat at a table, reading casualty reports. "You lost over 40% of your men," Threx said, stunned. Rhys didn't look up. "And we expected to lose more? That doesn't concern you?" Rhys finally looked up. His eyes were tired, but steady. "Every war we've fought," he said quietly. "We fought alone, against ourselves, against the dark. We don't fear loss. We fear forgetting why we fight." Threx had no answer to that. He left the tent in silence that night. He watched a recording of the battle again, frame by frame. He zoomed in on the faces of the human soldiers. What he saw made his blood run cold. It wasn't rage. It wasn't joy. It wasn't even hate. It was acceptance. Every one of them had accepted death before they stepped onto the battlefield, not as a last resort, but as a plan, as a method. He realized then that humans didn't fight like other species. They fought like survivors, like ghosts. And for the first time, Threx felt something he hadn't felt since the start of the war. Not hope, not fear, something in between. Something darker, something that whispered, "We brought something into this war. We don't understand it yet." And as more human ships arrived, hundreds more, Threx couldn't help but wonder. Had they invited allies, or something else entirely? Something worse, something unstoppable, something human? The second wave of human forces arrived, not with fanfare, but with silence. No cheers from the Alliance. No loud declarations from the new arrivals. Just rows of black ships descending into orbit above Talari's Prime, a critical defense world. Near the edge of contested space, the planet was dying. Its atmosphere burned from weeks of orbital bombardment. Ground cities had been reduced to steel skeletons and ash. Most commanders were preparing to abandon it. Another lost cause in a war of lost causes. But the humans did not retreat. They landed. Commander Threx, now assigned as a senior observer to the human forces, watched with growing confusion as the humans ignored Alliance protocols. They established no perimeter. They requested no planetary scans. They deployed their ground forces within hours of arrival, fast, precise, and silent. The rest of the Alliance thought it was madness. Who launches a planetary counteroffensive without full intelligence? Who pushes forward without proper air? Cover. Humans did, and it worked. Within a single rotation, they had established control of 2 major zones, pushing the Varn back from areas the Alliance had tried and failed to reclaim for months. Their tactics weren't elegant. They were aggressive, unpredictable, and terrifyingly effective. Humans used old streets as traps, collapsed ruined buildings to bury enemy squads, and rigged makeshift explosives from debris and alien tech as if it was second nature. Threx followed a battalion led by a young human, a captain named Solus. She couldn't have been more than 30 Earth years, but she carried herself like a veteran of 100 wars. Her orders were fast and cold. Her unit responded without hesitation. They never questioned her. They never paused. They moved like one creature, one relentless force. Even injured, they advanced. Even surrounded, they fought. At one point, Threx watched as a Varn dropship unleashed a barrage of plasma fire into a crater filled with wounded humans. Before the smoke had cleared, Solus was already issuing counterattack orders. A small team of 3 sprinted into the smoke, dragging 2 massive explosives and tossing them into the underbelly of the dropship. The resulting explosion lit up the night like a second sun and left a crater where the Varn vessel once hovered. Threx flinched. Solus didn't blink. "Confirm kills." "Move up," she said coldly, already scanning the next position. Later, when Threx finally gathered the courage to speak with her, he asked what drove her soldiers, why they kept pushing, even when outnumbered, outgunned. Bleeding, her answer chilled him. They'd rather die here than live knowing they did nothing. That night, Threx sent a report back to Alliance Command. He told them Talari's Prime might not fall. He told them that humans were holding. More than that, they were winning. But he also added something else. A warning: they do not fight like us. They do not mourn like us. They fight like each moment is their last. And that gives them a strength I do not understand. He never got a reply, because by the next morning, half the Alliance command stations in the sector had gone dark. The Varn had found them, and only the human channels stayed online. Across Talari's Prime, the fighting intensified. The Varn pushed harder, their elite units now engaged. Night battles became constant. Sleep vanished. Food ran low, but the humans didn't stop. They adapted. Solus's unit linked with two others, forming a mobile strike force that moved like fire across the map, crushing enemy forward positions one after another. Threx joined their convoy, traveling in an armored transport with 3 human marines. He expected talk, laughter, soldiers preparing for war with banter. And stories, there was none. The humans were quiet, not afraid, just ... Still. One of them cleaned his weapon over and over like a ritual. Another stared out the window, lips moving in silent thought. The third adjusted armor straps again and again. None of them asked questions. None of them complained. When Threx finally broke the silence to ask why they fought like this, the oldest Marine answered, without turning his head, "Because we've seen what happens when we don't." It was during the siege of Sector 9 that Threx saw it. The moment that changed everything. The Varn had unleashed something. Knew something none of the Alliance had seen before. Behemoth war form, 3 stories tall with armor that resisted. Plasma, lasers, and concussive rounds. It tore through the first line of defense like it was paper. Alliance forces broke instantly. Even human units were forced back. Then came a transmissionly footage from the field. Captain Solus, alone, standing in front of the war form with nothing but a rocket launcher and a pistol. The thing roared. Solus didn't move. She waited, listened, watched. Then she ran toward. It should have been suicide. The Varn weapon raised its clawed arm to crush her. But at the last moment, Solus leapt beneath it, rolled and planted 2 explosive charges on the joints of its legs. She was flung aside like a rag doll. Armor cracked, blood leaking from her mouth. But she didn't stop. She crawled forward, dragged herself across the scorched dirt, pulled the detonator from her belt, and smiled. Then fire consumed the war form. In a pillar of flames, Salas didn't survive, but Sector 9 did. The next day, Threx walked through the ruins of the battlefield, his boots crunching over ash and twisted metal. Human bodies lay still, some in pieces, others lined up by survivors with quiet reverence. No one cried, no one wailed. But the air was heavy with something far worse than grief. Conviction. These people chose to die, and not because they were forced to. Not because they were ordered, because they believed. Believed in what? Threx didn't yet know, but it frightened him, because in all his years of war, in all the death he'd seen, he had never met a species so willing to walk into fire, not for glory, not for power, but for something deeper. He didn't know what it was, but he would find out, because the war wasn't over, and the humans were just getting started. The front line had changed. Talari's Prime was no longer a battlefield. It had become a graveyard. The air was thick with smoke and blood. No clear skies. No birds. No sound except for distant fire and the soft hum of human dropships arriving. In waves. Commander Threx moved through the ruins, his armor coated in dust and old blood, his eyes fixed on the humans he now followed, not because he wanted to, but because he had to. He had seen something in them. Something far beyond courage or madness. They weren't the strongest species in the galaxy. Their weapons weren't the most advanced. Their ships weren't the fastest. But it didn't matter. They had something else. Darkness behind their calm, a silence that could smother even the most terrifying enemy. And it frightened Threx more than the war itself. The humans had retaken Sector 9, then 10, then 12. Piece by piece, they began forcing the Varn off-world. It's not because they had the numbers, they didn't, but because their enemies had started to fear them. The Varn weren't used to enemies that kept coming, that didn't stop even when there. Bodies were broken. Some human squads advanced without sleep for 3 days straight. Others fought with cracked helmets, missing limbs, bleeding from their eyes. But they still fought. And then came the bunkers. A network of deep Varn command tunnels buried beneath Telarisa's crust. Alliance scans had never found them. But the humans had. They didn't say how. They didn't explain where the intel came from. They simply moved, and once again Threx followed. The bunkers were sealed under hundreds of meters of reinforced steel and rock. The Varn had built them too. Last for centuries, no one had ever breached one, not even the war forms. But humans didn't use brute force. They used themselves. Threx stood at the edge of a shattered tunnel, staring down into darkness. The entrance had been blown open with hand-placed charges. 2 humans had gone in first, knowing full well it was suicide. One of them left a message before entering. "If we don't come back, don't send flowers, send fire." What happened inside wasn't recorded. The signal cut off moments after entry. But what emerged from the other side of the collapsed bunker hours later wasn't human or Varn. It was silence. Not a single Varn escaped. Not a scream, not a survivor. The entire complex went dark and stayed that way. Later, the humans said nothing. Not a word about the operation. Not a whisper of how they had breached it. But Threx noticed something. The survivors. What few there were returned with their helmets on. They didn't remove them for hours. When one soldier finally did, his face was pale, jaw trembling, eyes glassed over. Not with fear, but with memory. That was the first time Threx saw it clearly, the true horror of humanity. They didn't fear pain. They didn't fear death. What they feared was remembering. And yet they walked into darkness again and again, carrying burdens that would shatter any other warrior's mind. They were not heartless. They were haunted. The Alliance began whispering. Officers across the sector received classified reports about the humans' victories, about their brutal methods. Rumors spread like a virus that the humans were experimenting with ancient weapons, that they were rewriting their soldiers' minds to feel no pain, that they weren't saving Talaris, were cleansing it. Threx knew it wasn't true. Had seen the tears behind their silence, the exhaustion in their bloodied hands. But the whispers only grew. One Alliance commander requested the humans be removed from joint operations. Another threatened to shoot any human unit that crossed into his sector. They didn't understand. They feared what they couldn't control, just like the Varn had. Then came the night of the storm. A black thunder rolled over the planet, unnatural, like a weaponized pulse wave. Lightning struck without warning, not from clouds, but from the earth itself. Something had gone wrong? A new Varn weapon? No one knew. But all communications dropped, and one human unit was stranded. 20 soldiers, including Seleucus' second-in-command. Lieutenant Ray, a woman Threx had come to respect for her sharp, cold efficiency. She didn't smile. She didn't joke. But she never hesitated. She had led the attack on the 6th bunker. She had lost half her squad, and she never spoke of it. Now, she was cut off, alone, surrounded by thousands of Varn, in a collapsed district with no support. Threx wanted to help. The Alliance refused, but the humans didn't. A single squad deployed that night. Volunteers. They called themselves Ash Team. No one knew what that meant. No logos, no colors. Just 6 soldiers in black armor who didn't speak as they loaded into a dropship and vanished into the storm. 3 hours later, the skies cleared, and what returned was not a team. It was ashes. Ash Team never came back, but Lieutenant Ray walked out of that district carrying the bodies of her fallen, dragging 3 wounded by hand, her face scorched, her armor half melted to her skin. She had survived because someone had chosen to go into hell for her. Threx met her at the recovery zone. He asked her one question. Why? Her voice was hollow, broken, but steady. They don't leave their own behind, ever. Ever. That was the moment he understood. Humans weren't terrifying because they killed without fear. They were terrifying because they loved without limits. They suffered for each other. They carried pain like weapons. They faced horror not because they wanted to, because they refused to let it win. They didn't bury their fear. They used it, and that made them unstoppable. The morning sky over Tellerie's Prime turned red, not the soft glow of a sunrise or the filtered hue of the planet's atmosphere. No, this was something else, unnatural, violent. A thick, shimmering wall of heat and light suddenly erupted across the horizon, like a curtain of fire being drawn over the land. Entire sectors blinked off the grid. Communications went dead. Satellites above the planet began falling from orbit, burning up before they even touched the surface. Commander Threx had never seen anything like it, not in his long years as a warrior, not even in the darkest wars of his own people. Whatever this was, it wasn't a weapon of war, it was a statement. Human dropships scrambled into the sky within minutes. No orders, no delay. They launched before command centers even confirmed the breach. Threx, standing near the forward base, watched with a quiet dread as dozens of black ships cut through the air, each vanishing into the red storm. None turned back. Beside him stood Lieutenant Ray, still wrapped in bandages from the bunker rescue. She said nothing, but her hand gripped her sidearm like she knew something no one else did. Threx turned to her. "What is that?" Her reply was cold and soft. A retaliation. No further explanation came, just that word. It sent a chill through him deeper than the heat from the burning sky, because it meant one thing. The humans hadn't just been attacked, they'd been provoked. And now they were answering. The Alliance Command issued a general withdrawal order. Most species obeyed. They didn't want to be anywhere near whatever was coming. But humans didn't retreat. They didn't even acknowledge the command. Instead, they advanced. And Threx, driven by something he couldn't yet name, fear, loyalty, fascination, ordered his own squad to follow. They moved toward the storm. The edge of the red zone wasn't a battlefield. It was a massacre site. Twisted wreckage lay in smoking piles. Alien corpses, not human, were stacked like broken toys, some half-melted, others burned from the inside out. It wasn't human tech. It wasn't Varn. It was something older, something different. Ray crouched beside one of the bodies, scanning the flesh, the wounds, the molecular damage. Her face darkened. They activated the arc spire. Threx frowned. "What is that?" Not what? Where? She pointed toward the center of the storm, now glowing like a second sun, casting red shadows across the entire sky. There's something buried on this planet, deep, ancient. The Varn unearthed it. They didn't understand what they were playing with, and now? Threx asked. Now it's awake. He looked at her carefully. Why didn't anyone say anything before? She stood, staring into the storm, because the humans knew, and they were waiting. We weren't sent here to win a war. We were sent here to keep something inside that should never get out. Threx's blood turned cold. All this time, the strange behavior, the silence, the sacrifices, it wasn't about beating the Varn. It was about containment. Hours passed. As the humans pushed into the red zone, communication remained silent. Even the Alliance's long-range scans failed. No readings, no visuals, just static. And then, without warning, the light faded. The red sky vanished. In its place came the dark, but it wasn't night. It was something deeper, an emptiness, as if the sky itself had been torn open and nothing remained behind it. Then came the sound, not a roar, not a scream, a pulse, one beat like a heartbeat, so low and deep that it shook the bones inside their armor, then another, closer, stronger. Threx turned to Ray. What is that? Her voice barely rose above a whisper. It's coming through. Before he could ask what, a blast of energy cracked the ground open ahead. A wave of pressure through soldiers. To the dirt, something climbed out of the shattered crust. Not a machine, not a beast, but a shape of black and red fire, shifting, howling, stretching like a living shadow made of flame and agony. It wasn't Varn, it wasn't from this galaxy, and the humans didn't flinch. They charged. Not with tanks, not with nukes. With fire teams, 12 soldiers sprinted directly toward the beast. Each carried fusion blades and sonic disruptors, not meant to kill, but to contain. They dove into the heart of the storm like they had no sense of survival. Or perhaps like survival didn't matter anymore. They moved like ghosts. Like they had trained for this their entire lives. And maybe they had. Because what they faced wasn't just a threat, it was a reminder that Earth didn't fight wars for power or politics. It fought to bury old nightmares. And humans were the only ones mad enough, scarred enough to stand. Between the galaxy and whatever waited beyond the dark. Hours later, the storm was gone. The skies returned to blue. The ground cooled, and the silence returned. Of the 12 soldiers who went in, only 3 came back. Burned, broken, but standing. The creature, the anomaly, had vanished, contained, locked away, once again. Far below the surface. No questions were answered, and the humans offered. No explanation, but something had changed. Threx could feel it. He had entered this war believing. Humans were strange allies, brutal, reckless, emotional. Now he understood they were something worse, not monsters, keepers of monsters, and that was far more terrifying. The planet had gone still. After the red storm vanished, and the last anomaly was buried again, everything returned to silence. The air cooled, the skies cleared, but something in the ground remained awake. Commander Threx could feel it. Had spent the last day walking the ruins of the battlefield, or what remained of it. Most structures were gone, vaporized. The ground was scorched black, but there was no smell of ash, no smoke, no buzzing of insects, no sound at all. Even the wind refused to pass through this place. Humans had pulled back to their secure zones. They didn't celebrate the battle. They didn't mark it as a victory. No medals, no speeches, only repairs. They rebuilt their perimeter like they expected the sky to fall again at any moment. Threx, standing outside the human command post, noticed something strange. The humans had dug trenches around the Arcspire site, not outward, like a defensive wall, but inward, like they were trying to contain something that still wanted to escape. He didn't speak as he watched them work, but his thoughts ran wild. Why were humans so calm after facing that creature? Why weren't they leaving? Did they stay so close to something that nearly tore the planet in half? It was Rey who finally answered his questions, not with words, but with a small, old device she handed him late that night. It was a cracked data slate, rusted and patched with tape. Threx flipped it on. Message played in human voice. A man steady and cold. If you are reading this, it means the Arcspire has been touched. You're not the first. You won't be the last. No. What lies beneath it is older than our wars, older than our species. We found it during Earth's 2nd century of galactic contact, and we've been trying to lock it away ever since. The voice paused. This is not about politics. This is not about the Varn. This is not even about the Alliance. This is about something deeper, something that sleeps under the fabric of space itself. A hunger that thinks, that waits. It can't be killed, but it can be taught fear, and we're the only ones who ever made it bleed. The message ended. Threx stared at the screen for a long time, then looked up at Rey. "You've fought this before," she nodded. Double quotes where? Her voice dropped. "Earth. Once long ago, we called it the Breach. Half the planet burned. The other half, rebuilt." He felt cold again, and something else. Respect, fear, and a strange kind of awe. Because humans didn't just fight wars. They remembered why they fought them. And more importantly, they remembered what they had buried that night. Threx couldn't sleep. Not from nightmares, but from what he didn't know. The humans didn't fear the creature. They feared what would happen if others found it. If they used it, worshipped it, released it. That's why they were still here. Not to win a war, but to make sure no one else opened the wrong door. At dawn, a message came from orbit. The Alliance wanted to re-enter the system. They said the threat had passed. They wanted to reclaim their bases. The humans didn't answer. They shut down communications and doubled the guard. When Threx asked why, Ray gave him a single answer. Because the war isn't over. But the Varn are gone, Threx argued. Ray looked at him, blinking. This was never about the Varn. She turned and walked back toward the containment site. And at that moment, Threx realized something that changed everything. Humanity didn't trust anyone with what lay beneath the soil. Not even their allies. And maybe, for the first time in his life, he agreed with them. Because whatever was still whispering from under that blackened ground, it wasn't done. And it had learned something new from humanity. What fear really looked like. And it liked it. The night stretched long over the shattered plains of Talaris. Prime, but sleep never came to Commander Threx. He sat near the human perimeter, watching the dim glow of their mobile towers flicker against the dark. Their camps weren't loud like other species. There was no music, no laughter, no celebration, just the soft hum of machines and the dull stomp of boots. Moving in quiet patterns, humans didn't rest after victory. They prepared, even now. Days after the creature was contained beneath the arc spire, the humans built heavier walls. They placed sensor towers in strange geometric patterns around the site. Every piece of technology was placed with purpose, not just for defense, but for ritual. Threx had seen battlefields. He'd seen aftermaths. But this wasn't like those. This felt like standing beside a graveyard where the dead might reach up again if no one kept watch. And the humans. They kept watch like priests guarding the gate of something holy or cursed. Lieutenant Ray emerged from the dark with 2 metal mugs in her hands. She handed one to Threx and sat beside him on the cold stone ledge. The drink was bitter, black, and scalding human coffee, they called it. It tasted like ash and steel. Threx sipped it anyway. He waited a moment before speaking. You still haven't told me what that thing really was. Ray didn't look at him. Would it matter? Yes, she finally turned. It wasn't a weapon. It's not in the way we understand. It wasn't made. It was born. Or maybe it always was. A thing from outside space, outside time. We gave it a name once. The Hollow Flame. Threx narrowed his eyes. Why that name? Because it burns without light, speaks without sound. And wherever it touches, something disappears. Not just matter, not just people, meaning. He frowned. Meaning. She nodded. The hollow flame doesn't kill you. It unravels you. Memories, emotions, purpose, everything that made you who you are. Gone, not erased. It's just never there to begin with. A cold shiver moved down his spine. And you fought this before? On Earth? She nodded slowly. We opened the wrong door once. Dug too deep. Found it. It infected machines first, then minds. It took entire cities before we figured out how to stop it. Threx couldn't imagine it. Force that erased a person from reality itself. Not death, not pain, just nothing. But you stopped it? Ray didn't answer immediately. We pushed it back, sealed it, buried it beneath 20 kilometers of Earth's crust, then built a city over it so no one would ever look. She took another sip of her drink and stared into the dark. But something went wrong. Threx listened silently. A piece of it didn't stay buried. It drifted, through space, through dimensions. We don't know how. We tracked it here, to this planet, long before the Varn arrived, before the Alliance even charted this system. He finally understood. The humans didn't join this war out of alliance. They weren't here to fight the Varn. They were here to chase a ghost. And now that ghost had touched the soil of another world. Threx felt the weight settle in his chest. How many know? Ray looked at him, her eyes cold. Outside Earth?
Outside.
You. Why me? Because you didn't run. They sat in silence for a long time. Then Threx asked the question he didn't want to ask. Can it be stopped for good? She answered without hesitation. No. His breath caught. Then why? Fight it. This time her answer came slow, because someone has to. Not to win, not to kill it, but to make sure it remembers what it felt like to bleed. Threx stared at her, and in that moment, he didn't see a soldier. He saw something else. Something human, and yet far colder than he had thought possible. Not evil. Not cruel, just prepared to do whatever it took. And that terrified him more than the creature itself. The stars began to rise, and with them, the sensors lit up faint vibrations beneath the soil. Just a whisper, but enough to make Ray stand. She looked down at the scanner, then at the distant glowing center of the Arc Spire's tomb. It's moving again, she said. Threx stood beside her, his throat dry. Should we tell the Alliance? Ray turned away. No. Why? Her answer was final, because they'll want to study it, and the next time, we might not survive. She walked toward the command tent, her voice trailing behind. We're not guarding this place to save. Others were guarding it, so no one else makes our mistake. Threx remained where he stood. For the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of the enemy. He was afraid of what it meant to stand beside humans, because when they said they feared, nothing, it wasn't a boast, it was a warning. The cold wind moved across the plains like a warning. No birds flew, no machines hummed. The only sound was the distant click of weapons being loaded. Threx stood alone on the watchtower, staring at the Arc Spire's dim glow. Beneath that quiet ground, the hollow flame stirred again. Not with violence, but with curiosity, and that was worse. It was studying them. The humans had tightened their perimeter. No one entered without triple clearance. No signals were sent off-world. No outside ships were allowed to land. The Alliance had begun to protest. Requests became warnings, then threats, but the humans didn't answer. They were preparing for something worse than another Varn attack. Threx had seen their files, or what little Ray let him see. Energy patterns that didn't match physics. Shadows caught in places without light. Voices recorded on silent channels. Machines that aged 1,000 years overnight, and still, humans didn't panic. They just adjusted their plans. Ray stood beside him now, armored and calm, staring at the same glowing soil. We received a message last night, she said, not looking at him. From who? Aboard the Vigilant Dawn, an Alliance dreadnought. Threx narrowed his eyes. They're coming down? She nodded once. Landing in 2 hours. He turned sharply. But the containment zone isn't safe. We told them they don't care. They said they have full rights to the planet. They believe we're hiding something. Threx almost laughed. You're hiding something. Ray didn't smile, I know. He waited. So what's the plan? Her face was stone. We show them. Threx blinked. Show them. Her voice dropped lower. Not everything. Just enough. He stared at her for a long moment. The dreadnought had over 2,000 crew. Elite scientists. Diplomats. Warriors. If the humans triggered a reaction, it could be a massacre. You're using them, he said quietly. It's bait. No, she said, as witnesses. That word sent ice down his spine. 2 hours later, the Vigilant Dawn landed. The ground shook. It was a beautiful ship, gleaming silver, proud, bearing the crest of the Galactic Alliance. Its captain, High Speaker Veril, marched out in full diplomatic dress. It's followed by a team of officers and scientists. Threx stood beside Ray when they approached. Veril didn't bow. He didn't even slow down. You are in violation of the Interstellar Contact and Preservation Act, Veril said sharply. You have taken control of an unclaimed world. You've interfered with council affairs. You will hand over the site. Immediately, Ray handed him a tablet. It showed live footage from deep sensors, something below the soil. Moving, growing, changing shape. This is why we're here, Ray said simply. Rael watched for 10 seconds before laughing. A trick? Psychological warfare. You people always... Then the earth trembled. A deep, low sound like metal screaming rose from beneath the spire. Every human froze. weapons raised. Sensors flashed red. Varel looked around, confused. What is this? What are you playing? Threx saw it first, a crack in the soil. No light. It's just a hole where reality itself seemed to bend inward. The air shimmered. Gravity twisted. One of the Alliance scientists began to cry without reason. Another screamed. Varel stepped forward and Ray shoved him back hard. Don't get close to it, she said coldly. It remembers minds, not faces. The Alliance crew backed away, the hole closed. The silence returned. But now the Dreadnought crew had seen it. The fear in their eyes was real, and Ray stepped in front of them all. This is what you wanted. To study, this is what you thought you could handle. Varel stared at her, sweating. You kept this from us? She nodded, and we still will. If you value your species, your people, your children, get back on your ship, and forget you ever saw this place. One of the Alliance soldiers began to protest, raising a weapon. Then dozens of human rifles clicked in unison. They weren't. Bluffing Threx didn't know what scared him more, the thing in the soil, or the humans who had learned to live beside it. The Alliance crew left, fast. No more questions. No more threats. That night, Ray stood beside the black crater that had opened and closed like a blinking eye. Threx walked up beside her. You scared them? She nodded. Was that the goal? No, she whispered. The goal was to remind them of what? She looked at him with eyes that hadn't truly slept in days. That not all monsters live in the dark. Some wear uniforms. Some hold peace treaties. Some smile when they lie. And some, like us, know the difference. Threx didn't respond because he realized something horrible. The real secret wasn't the hollow flame. The real secret was that only humans knew how to keep it locked away. And that meant, as long as it existed, no one could afford to cross them. Not the Varn, not the Alliance, not even their friends. Because if the day came when humans stopped guarding that tomb, Galaxy wouldn't survive the night. The sun never rose that day. Its thick clouds clung to the sky like old wounds refusing to heal. In the distance, the Arc Spire stood tall, and Silentide's glow dimmed, but its presence heavier than ever. Commander Threx stood at the edge of the containment zone. Wrapped in silence, waiting for answers, he wasn't sure he wanted any more. The air had changed. It wasn't just cold, it was charged, like the planet was holding its breath. The Alliance had gone. Their dreadnought lifted off hours earlier, leaving only a single message behind. We will not return. That was all. No threats, no apologies. Just fear disguised as formality. Now, only the humans remained. And Threx, he had chosen to stay, not as a soldier, not even as an observer, but as a witness. Ray approached, her footsteps crunching softly on the frozen soil. Her armor was scratched and worn. Her eyes had aged years and days. She didn't speak. At first just stood beside him and looked out at the crater. You never told me, Threx said. What's really down there? She didn't answer immediately. Then something we didn't create, but something that recognized us. He turned to her. Recognized. Her voice was barely more than a breath. It called out.
Out.
With sound. With memory. It knew us. Knew what we feared. What we were capable of. It understood us the moment we touched it. It still let you live? It didn't let us live. We fought for that right. Threx stared at her. She continued, her voice flat. During the breach on Earth, it reached into every mind. On the planet, it didn't speak. It didn't roar. It just showed us everything, every future where we lost. Every possible end where it devoured our worlds, our stars, our children. It showed us surrender. She paused, but we didn't. The wind blew again, carrying dust across the blackened field. We burned our own cities to trap it, she said. We tore open the sky to lock it underground. We turned our weapons on ourselves if it meant pushing it back. We showed it something. It didn't expect, Threx whispered. What? Ray looked him dead in the eyes. That we would destroy ourselves before we let it win. The ground below them hummed softly, a vibration. It's barely there. But Threx felt it in his bones, and it feared that, she added. because for all its power, it doesn't understand sacrifice, or pain, or rage born of love. Doesn't understand. What makes us human? Threx didn't move, couldn't speak. The truth was too big, too heavy. So you buried it, he said finally. Ray shook her head. No, we didn't bury it. Chained it. She pointed to the towers surrounding the crater reach, humming faintly with invisible energy, pulsing in rhythm with the spire. These aren't prisons, she said. They're warnings for who? For everyone. The wind shifted again. Far behind them, human engineers worked in silence. Drones hovered in the air, scanning for the smallest shifts in gravity or radiation. No one spoke loudly. No one joked. It wasn't a base anymore. It was a graveyard. And every human walking on it treated it like sacred ground. Threx looked at Ray once more. What happens if it ever escapes? She didn't answer right away. Then we burn again. This time we don't stop. Felt a chill crawl up his back. So why tell me all this? He asked. Because you stayed, she said simply. And because one day, someone else might come here, someone who doesn't listen, someone who thinks they can control it. And when that happens, I need at least one voice in the galaxy to say, humanity warned us. He looked back at the arc spire, its ancient stone still cracked from the last battle. Beneath it, the hollow. Flame waited, not sleeping, just watching. I'll tell them, he said quietly. Ray nodded once, then turned and walked away. As she disappeared into the mist, Threx stayed behind, staring into that silent hole in the universe. He realized then that humans weren't the galaxy's most dangerous species because of their weapons or their armies. They were the most dangerous because they were willing to suffer, willing to burn, willing to fight the end itself and take the whole universe with them if they had to. And whatever ancient thing lay beneath that soil had learned that lesson the hard way. Humanity hadn't just locked it away, they had taught it what fear really is, and now it remembered their faces, all of them, forever.